This is the Neurosurgery Podcast.
Welcome back to the Neurosurgery Podcast. We have a podcast favorite, Professor Kate Drummond. Welcome
Hi,
back.
Michael. How are you? Thank you.
How was your trip in from Melbourne, Australia?
As you know, my trip in from Melbourne, Australia is long, but you know, you get a lot of work done on that plane.
How do you never look jet lagged?
Oh, don't worry, I am. It's, you know, stand up straight, smile. That's how you do it.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I mean, many of my colleagues are Australian. We've had a lot of Australian fellows. My co-fellow is Australian, Matt McDonald, who you know in Adelaide, right?
Yep.
And, I've been to Australia maybe a dozen times, and I love the country. You guys seem to fit really nicely into the world. Like, you guys, in that sector of the Pacific, basin and all of Asia, you're a destination, right?
Yeah.
How is it that the Australian neurosurgeon fits this role so nicely?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, we're a nation of immigrants, of
convicts,
people from everywhere. Convicts to start with, but then waves of immigration from Europe, from Asia, now from Africa. So, we've got a population that really looks outward as well as, coming together. So I think, that's a big start. The other thing is we're great travellers. So we get out, we see the world. Most Australians aren't kind of, I could never go there. It's too long a flight, because everywhere is a long flight. So if you're going to go anywhere, but also I think we're a small nation, but we want to have a big impact.
You're an entire continent, right?
Yeah, that's right. But we want to have a big impact. So when you're an island continent, a long way from everywhere, you have to get out there and fit in, but take the best of what you have to everywhere else.
So unlike my typical American colleague, and not to disparage us, but like if I ask someone to point to Finland on a globe, they might get Scandinavia, but they're probably not going to hit Finland. You guys don't have that problem.
We're probably a little bit better. I mean, I'm not going to say that the whole of Australia is outward looking, but no, I think we're a little bit better. We actually do learn some geography. I certainly remember when I was here, two great comments when I was a fellow in Boston. The first one was a lady saying to me, "Oh, and where are you from, dear?" One of my patients, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Australia." And she's like, "You're doing very well with your English." And then the second one was, "Where are you from, dear?" And I'm like, "Australia." And she's like, "Oh, where that nice Governor Schwarzenegger's from." Yeah, no, not Austria.
That's so funny. But so let's talk about the world being like smaller, right? Like nowadays, whether it's the news, communication, like you're here in San Antonio. Is your first time?
First time in San Antonio, yes.
Okay, well, it's the first time for a lot of people, right? Yeah. But the world's getting smaller. Some people traveling everywhere. They have communication. They have information. Surgery's becoming, I'm sure, very similar in Australia than in the U.S., right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me because, the Australian fellows we've had in Miami have been some of the technically most gifted people. And they go everywhere. Like when they're in training, they go to...
Yeah, we go all over the country.
Yeah, like our residents complain like I can't afford an apartment, but your guys and gals, they go to what, like 5 sites? Or 4?
We try to keep it to 3 now, but it could have bbeen up to 4 or 5. I had 4 different hospitals I trained in.
I almost feel like Americans are getting less equipped for this shrinking world. Like I'm going to generalize, talking about what, 25 million people or something like that?
27, yeah.
27 million Australians. And it's like, all Australians are like this. Obviously, people in Perth would be different from Melbourne or Sydney, right? But they seem to just travel better. They seem to have a better understanding of the place in the world and how they fit into the ecosystem. A lot of Americans have never left America or even their own home state.
Well, maybe that's because up until now you haven't had to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all here. That is, a lot of innovation, a lot of industry. It's all here. So with 27 million people, it's not going to be all with us. So we've had to be outward looking. Even the earlier neurosurgeons in our country, they went to England to train, and then they started coming to the US to train, or France. So it's been a history of that. I think, now we can use that sort of ability to reach out even further, say into Asia, which is a great mix of both high functioning and health systems and LMICs, to sort of bring everyone, try and not level the playing field, but raise everyone to up to the same platform.
I mean, you must have lots of patients that come from Indonesia or Vietnam,
not so
Philippines.
Much, not so much. You know, that really Singapore and India have made themselves the hubs of that. We haven't had that big medical tourism because Australia, remember, you know, although we have a private health system, very much wedged into a government system.
Yeah. I got to tell you, like, the adaptation of Australia, like, I think about, like, disc replacement was adopted much earlier in Australia than in America, right?
Yeah, but it hasn't been widespread.
Right. And then it kind of got rejected a bit, but it was much more experimental in terms of, like, exploring, like, these are technologies, even though we tend to think of the US as being high tech, but a lot of technologies, certainly in spine, seem to be coming to Australia almost faster.
We have quite a good regulatory environment. So, I mean, spine's not my thing, but even for things like perioperative trials, you know, getting ethics and approval and everything else to run a really complex, you know, biopsy trial, looking at mechanism, you know, being able to do those two operations without, you know, being quite so concerned about reimbursement, being able to get ethics approval, etc. You know, IRB and whatever. You know, I think we've got quite a good environment for that. So we are early adopters in that way. Then getting someone to pay for it is a problem.
Yeah, so I want to touch on something that came up yesterday night. The plant lecturer was Marty McCrary, who's the head of the US FDA, right? I don't know if you heard the talk.
I was there, yeah.
So he made a very compelling argument to streamline FDA, and I don't know if this is true or not, but you're much closer to China than we are. Like, I've always said that I think the Chinese, for better or worse, and my family's Taiwanese, but they're going to find a cure for spinal cord injury before us because they can kind of experiment faster, is a way to put it.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that? Like, is the U.S., you think, a little bit at risk of just being too resting on its laurels with new technology?
Well, I think that the thing is for better or for worse. It's exactly what you said. You know, you've got to have a good regulatory environment to protect people.
Yeah.
But it can also be a hindrance. And so working out what is just the right amount of regulation, how you can streamline contracts and IP and all of the stuff that our sorts of systems get bogged down in, that in other systems they just go, we're not having any of that, we're doing this. Finding, exactly the right balance, I think, is really difficult. And I think, what you're saying about the FDA is right. You've got to shorten that busy work, the stuff that doesn't mean anything but takes time, but you've got to make sure you've got the right checks and balances in place.
It's very good. Critique our healthcare system a little bit more because, I mean that because we're at a time of high critique but low quality information, right? Like, you are in an advanced healthcare system that faces similar challenges and you've adapted differently. The phenotype is different, right? When you look at America and you travel here, and I don't know if you've ever had to get healthcare here, but what do you see, like, what should neurosurgeons be doing to make this better? To make it better. I'm very envious of Australian surgeons, and I'm only seeing probably the grass is greener, but I think at our healthcare system, like, I'd much rather actually probably work in Australia as a neurosurgeon.
No, you would.
No?
No.
Tell me why.
No.
Tell me so I can feel better about myself.
Well, no. I mean, you asked me what the two things that I think about the healthcare system that we've sort of already touched on is, firstly, the way you train people, institution-based, probably is quite insular. People end up
inbred.
Coming from that institution, which is fine. But it also means, when I was a fellow at Harvard, everyone did everything the Harvard way.
It's more consistent.
And I knew that there was 9 ways to skin.
It could be consistently
and
bad.
8 of them worked. So there was that. The other thing is, I really find interesting from someone who comes from a very clinical trial, evidence-based medicine, and we don't do it perfectly, of course, to some of the other systems that I've peripherally worked in, which is a user-pays system, where, patients really sometimes dictate their own care, no matter how, when I look at it and I think, well, that's crazy. I think that's not great at advancing the field. It's great for innovation, but it's not great for producing evidence.
Well, this is fantastic. I know you're probably dying to either go to sleep or to the dinner or whatever. But I can't imagine you're flipped upside down on the time, but you always look so great. Professor Kate Drummond, thank you for everything you do. Australia is really a gem of the world for neurosurgery, and I mean that. And then, your institution, Melbourne, the Royal Melbourne, is really one of those shining stars. So thank you for everything you do every day for neurosurgeons and for the patients.
Thank you. But also I'd like to thank the AANS, because that's always been, and you, Michael, always been so welcoming to me to be, included on committees. Everyone has allowed me to be involved, and, I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.